a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm 𝗪𝗬ci𝘂'𝗹𝗹, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Career Clarity Unlocked. If you have been sending out applications, hearing crickets, and wondering what on earth is actually going on behind the scenes in hiring right now, then this is the episode for you. We're going to dive into what makes candidates stand out in a wildly competitive job market, why networking matters more than ever, and how to use LinkedIn in a way that actually opens doors, and what job seekers need to stop doing if they want better results. We're also talking about confidence, personal branding, and why job security might not look like the way it used to. So if you're ready for a real, honest, no fluff conversation about how to get seen, get noticed, and create more career opportunities for yourself, this is for you. And I am so excited that joining me today is Melissa Grabiner. Melissa is a talent acquisition executive, a job search coach, and a business advisor. She is ranked the #1 female HR LinkedIn creator in the US and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, Indeed Business, MarketWatch, and Fast Company. Let's get started. Welcome, Melissa, to Career Clarity Unlocked.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation. And I want to start off, you have such incredible experience, both from a hiring manager, recruiter, as well as job search coach perspective. And you've reviewed thousands of resumes and LinkedIn profiles.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there's ever been a moment for you where a candidate completely changed your perception in a matter of seconds. And what exactly did they do differently than other candidates that our job seekers right now could learn from?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, this happened to me recently where I had a client who hired me to help them with their resume and optimizing their LinkedIn profile. And so before the call, as I do with all my calls, I took a look at both materials. And when I looked on the LinkedIn profile, it was okay. It was a little kind of minimum. It didn't really shout out to me. But then when I took a look at the resume, it blew me away. There were a ton of quantifiable achievements, and it was so clear from reading the resume just how accomplished this person was. So my perception of initially reading the LinkedIn profile was, all right, we have work to do on this profile. I think there's some ways we can enhance it. But then again, when I took a look at the resume, it was totally different from the profile. And it's a perfect example, and this is what I say to all my clients, is that having quantifiable achievements on a resume is really important because it takes your job, what you've done, and it shows the impact of what you've done. And in this incredibly challenging and competitive job markets, candidates need to stand out from the rest, right? And so it's not uncommon for companies to post a role and get hundreds, if not thousands, of resume for one position. So the resumes that stand out are the ones that show the impact of your job. And so one of the things I do with my clients is say, all right, let's take a look at your experience and how can we quantify? And I'm not saying every bullet on a resume has to be quantified. I'd actually say it shouldn't be every bullet, but you definitely want to have at least a third to a half of your bullets under each job to be quantifiable, because what hiring managers and recruiters are looking for, again, is the impact of the work that someone has done.
That's super important, and I 100% agree. When I do that work with my clients, the most common question I get is, oh, I don't have any quantifiable achievements.
Yeah,
I don't have access to the numbers, or I wasn't in sales, which is obviously the clearest one, right? If you're in sales, there's a dollar amount of revenue brought in. There's a number. For someone who is in a more soft skill based role, or in HR, or in roles where they're aren't these clear metrics. What are your recommendations?
I think there's always ways to quantify, right? So I worked with like an executive assistant recently, and her resume had no quantifiable achievements. And we were talking about it, and she's like, well, I haven't done anything that's quantifiable. So then what I did was I asked her to walk me through her background. And based on our conversation, I was able to say, here's what you did, but what about this? What percent dollar did you save by changing the process? What percent efficiency did you increase it by changing the process? So I do think, for most jobs, there are ways that you can quantify a resume bullet, right? And so I think it's just a matter of really thinking through your experience and thinking about, did I save time? Did I prove efficiency? Did I reduce, like if you're a recruiter, or were you able to take time to fill, like reduce that, or were you able to save on the cost for search firms? So there's typically a way you can quantify a bullet. But like I said, not every bullet should be quantifiable. Try to get no more than half per job. And maybe use ChatGPT. Maybe say, all right, here's the resume bullet. I'm not sure how to quantify it. Quantify it. What are some ideas? And then based on what AI is telling you, then think through your experience and say, oh, maybe I was able to quantify it either this way or that way. So there's nothing wrong with using AI to help in that regard. You just want to be able to make sure that whatever you indicate on your resume, you can talk about in an interview, right? You don't want to have something on your resume and then you're asked about it, but you're not able to speak to it. That is something that you don't want to get yourself into. So
100%. And I really love the idea. I've used AI in that way too.
mhm.
Of I've put a resume bullet in and be like, give me a placeholder anywhere possible where I could add a quantifiable number
Yes,
in there.
exactly.
And I love you asking, what are all the ways I can quantify it? And there are so many ways. A lot of people like, oh, I managed like an executive assistant. I managed all these different schedules. How many schedules did you
Ex
manage? Simple as
exactly.
that. You collaborated with different teams. How many teams did you collaborate with? What was the
Exactly.
timeline of the project, right? There's so much more than just the
Yes.
dollar figure that you produced.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I want to get your take on this too. Something I often recommend when people think about work experience that's 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're like, I didn't take any notes. I don't remember the numbers. I don't remember if there were 10, 12, 15 stakeholders. I often say write 10 plus.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with
That,
that approach. Hmm.
yeah. Because that way you can stand behind the number. You're not making it up. You feel confident it's more than 10, but you don't know the exact number. So adding a
Exactly.
plus keeps you safe there.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Love that. Now, I think we both probably have the experience of talking to a lot of job seekers that right now feeling like every application they're sending out is going into a black hole.
Mhm.
From your insider perspective, what is actually happening behind the scenes in the hiring process that most candidates might not even see or misunderstand? And how will that impact their strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's actually two lines of thought I have about this. So I think what a lot of people don't realize is that the job market, especially in the United States, is way more competitive and challenging than I think a lot of job seekers even realize. I've been in recruiting for 20 years, and I can tell you honestly that in 20 years of this sort of work, I've never seen more people looking for a job. In 2025, on December 31st, so the last day of the year in 2025, it was noted that 1.2 million people in America in 2025 were let go of their job. So what's happening is the job market is saturated with more competition. And I think once people get into the job search and they realize, like, why am I not hearing back? How come my phone is silent? Why am I not getting replies on my emails? I think it's because people don't realize at the start of a job search just how challenging it is. So, what I always say to my clients is that the job search right now is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I don't say that to burst their bubble and I don't say that to make them scared, but I try to set the expectations. Like if you were looking for a job 2 years ago, the landscape was way different than it is right now. Almost every day in the news, I hear about another company doing mass layoffs. So again, it's saturating the job market with more competition. So what's happening behind the scenes in hiring is that recruiters are being faced with looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes for one opening, which is insane. The other thing that's happening in behind the scenes with a lot of companies, and I say this because one of the things that I do is I do talent acquisition consulting. I work with biotech companies and I work as an extension of their teams. And these companies hire me to find people for their jobs. Right now, I have 3 clients, okay? My clients, all 3 of them, don't even post their jobs because what was happening was they would post a role and within 24 hours, they would get hundreds of applications. And the recruiting team does not have the bandwidth to sort through that. The other problem is artificial intelligence. And what a lot of people are doing now is they're using these AI tools to take a job description and then take their resume. And then the AI updates the resume based on the keywords from the job description. So a lot of these resumes are starting to look very similar to one another. So my clients contacted me and said, we want you to use your LinkedIn recruiter license to find people for our jobs. So what I do is I go on LinkedIn and using the recruiter tool, I search for candidates who are a potential fit for my clients. So I think that the key takeaway here is that what's happening behind the scenes is that recruiters are getting absolutely slaughtered with an incredibly high level of applications, but a lot of companies are also having their recruiter teams find candidates proactively, whether it's on a tool like LinkedIn, there's other tools that, companies are using as well. This ties back to why having an optimized profile is so incredibly important. And when I work with my clients and I help them optimize their profile, I help them with the pieces of the profile, but I also explain to them the why behind it. So I take them behind the scenes on LinkedIn. I show them what it looks like from a recruiter standpoint and what their profile looks like if they were being viewed in recruiter mode. And then they understand why it is so important to have an optimized profile. And I personally would not be surprised if at some point in time, resumes are just an obsolete thing because of AI. So many resumes are being written by AI that companies don't know what is truthful and what isn't. So it's going to be an interesting time in the near future to see how the landscape changes within talent acquisition.
It's fascinating how
Mhm.
AI is impacting every facet of our lives, but in this case, the recruiting process. And then adding to that, there's all these AI tools now that mass apply for you.
Yes.
It blasts
Which,
out hundreds of
yes.
applications a day if you set it that way. And that inundates recruiters with just so many applications that even with a good software you can't handle.
You just brought up such a good point, and that is called reverse recruiting. And reverse recruiting firms are popping up everywhere. So my personal take of it is I am not a fan of reverse recruiting. First of all, it's very expensive for the candidate, especially a lot of job seekers are cash constrained because they're not getting an income. So what a lot of these reverse recruiting firms do is they'll say, in a week, we're going to send out 100 applications on your behalf. And to me, there's a lot of issues with that approach. First of all, to your point, it's just flooding the market with more applications. And a lot of times when someone applies for a role, they have to complete a set of pre-screen questions. And if someone's applying on your behalf, they don't know how to answer those pre-screen questions sometimes. And so um, I am, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm probably on the platform between 5 and 7 hours a day. And I am seeing more and more posts about this reverse recruiting trend. But absolutely, I say to my clients, and they ask me all the time, like, what do you think of this? And I tell them I am against it. Also, because the chances of finding a job through a posting is minimal. The chances of landing a job through your network is much more probable.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I personally, I'm getting starting to get allergic to AI content. No matter
Yeah.
if I see it written
Yes.
somewhere or on a resume or on a LinkedIn profile, you can immediately tell that
Oh,
this was written by
mhm.
AI. And so can recruiters, right? So can hiring
Yes.
managers. And if you have a resume, and I'm not saying to not use AI, I use AI all the time. It's a fantastic thought partner. But don't feed in a job description, say, tailor my resume to it, and then copy paste that in.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of job seekers are doing. And so to your point earlier, I mean, that's just flooding the market with more competition. But as a recruiter myself and someone who's been doing this for 20 years, I could spend 5 seconds on a resume and tell you if it's AI written. And when you have a job description that perfectly aligns with your resume, that to me is a red flag. Because then if I start talking to the candidate, did they really truly do all these things, or are they trying to get their foot in the door by being the best fit as they can based on the duties and responsibilities that are contained within the job description? So hiring right now is in a very interesting time. Again, we have this onslaught of AI. We have a horrible job market that there is just an abundance of people looking for jobs. Every day there's new technology that is coming out to help both job seekers and to help recruiters. So I feel like the market is saturated with tools. It'll be interesting to see where this goes, but I do know that AI is not going anywhere. And I also believe, and I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, I also believe that the job market is only going to get worse. I mean, it was in the news recently that Meta or Facebook, they're going to be laying off over 10,000 people. Dell Computers, same thing. But almost every day you hear about these companies that are doing these mass layoffs. And now with AI taking a lot of these jobs, I just feel like it's going to get worse. And so it will be really interesting to see what happens 6 months from now, a year from now. That's why I always tell my clients, if you can build something of your own or start a business with the knowledge that you have, maybe that's something smart to look into as well.
Absolutely agree. And on top of that, in the past, when you had a stable job, that was job security.
Right.
Looking at all these layoffs, now this is anything but job security. There is no job that is secure at this point anymore. It
Yeah.
simply doesn't exist. So I always tell people job security right now means to network, to
Hmm.
make sure your LinkedIn is updated, that you have an
Hmm.
updated resume, that you track your accomplishments, that you also really contribute and be visible in the company you work for so that they see your value and will not replace you with AI. All
Well, you know
of
what happened?
those are what job security is nowadays.
Yeah, and I'll tell you really quickly what happened with me. So I worked at a company for 18 years. I was the global director of talent acquisition for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And I live in Chicago, and they moved my position to New York. And my sons at the time were in high school, and I didn't want to relocate, so I ended up leaving. I then took another job and I worked there for 18 months. And at this time, my position was moved to New York, and I did not want to relocate, so I ended up leaving. So in a short period of time, I experienced 2 layoffs. And I remember vividly saying to my husband, I am done with a CEO deciding my fate.
Mhm.
And the second layoff was the push that I needed to start 2 small businesses, which is something that I always dreamed of doing, but I was too scared or reluctant to start. Looking back, those layoffs were the best thing to happen to me because it gave me the push to go out on my own. And when you're a business owner, there are pros and cons. It's not always easy being a business owner, but I am my own boss. I can take vacation when I want. No one is going to approve my vacation time. I, I can take off a month and no one has to approve it. I work as little or as much as I want. I don't have an alarm clock, so I can go to the gym at 2 in the afternoon. But the best thing I did was bet on myself. And what I say to a lot of my clients is, and I don't sugarcoat things with them, but again, think about your skill set. Can you leverage that to maybe start a side hustle? Because I believe that corporate America is in a complete change right now. And again, as I mentioned earlier, with AI, I think more and more positions are going to start getting eliminated. So betting on yourself is really the best thing you can do. And even if someone still wants to get a corporate job, that's fine. Continue to look for a role, but maybe see if you can make some money on the side with the skill set that you have. It doesn't hurt to try, and you never know what could happen.
Absolutely. And that is actually an approach I've started taking with some of my clients as we're seeing the challenges on the job market is to do a dual approach, job search and consulting.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
whatever their field of expertise is, can we build a
Hmm.
consultancy around it?
Exactly.
Can you offer this as a consultant to companies, your expertise? At the same time, continue the job search. And it gives you two opportunities. One, they might hire you as a consultant, keep you on it, and then hire you as a full-time employee.
Right.
If this is what you want, not everyone wants to be self-employed, but it gives you another in.
Hmm.
Or if as you're job searching, I've had that with a client happen. They were in a final interview where the company realized they actually don't need a full-time employee and they hired them as a consultant instead
Yep.
because they had that service available. It creates more opportunities.
It does. It does. It's so important to, I think, leverage your knowledge into a way that you could potentially make some money on the side. The best thing I did for myself was start these two small businesses. But after that second layoff, I just was like, you know what? No more is a CEO who doesn't even know who I am going to decide that I'm a line item on a budget sheet and they're going to cross my name off. And just like that, when I worked at that company for 18 years, I truly believed that I was going to retire from there. I was very, very happy. I had a lot of upward mobility for the time that I was there. And when they moved my position to the East Coast, it emotionally took me a long time to get over that. And it kind of threw me for a loop. And I was very fortunate they offered me a relocation. But at the end of the day, it wasn't an option for me with my family. I don't regret leaving at all. But at the time, it was a really hard thing that I had to, kind of work through. But after then, when I took another job and after 18 months, I was laid off from there, that's when I said, you know what? I'm done putting my fate in the hands of a CEO who doesn't even know who I am.
1000%.
Yeah.
They they're not invested in their employees.
No,
As you said, you're a line on their expense sheet.
that's exactly
That's
right.
it. And if they
Uh-huh.
need to cut you, they'll cut you.
Hmm.
So investing in yourself, whatever that means, is the
Hmm.
most important thing right now.
100%. I'll tell you something interesting. A couple weeks ago, one of my clients I worked with was a vice president from Microsoft. This guy was incredibly polished, incredibly seasoned. He had a remarkable background and a remarkable resume. And he got laid off from Microsoft. He was distraught, devastated, rightfully so. And we had a nice long talk about, the higher up you go, the less jobs of those titles that there are, right? And so I was very honest with him, like if you want to still get a job in corporate America, by all means, try to search for that job. But you have Microsoft on your resume. You were a VP at Microsoft. Try to leverage this into maybe starting something on the side. And he said to me, he's like, I never even thought of that. And I said, yeah, do both at the same time, but it's a way to kind of keep your skills fresh, bring money into the fold, right? At the same time, you can still continue to look for a new job. And then it was interesting because about a week ago, he got in touch with me and he told me that he actually has two clients now that he's working with. And so, he's a perfect example of someone who's very seasoned, who has an incredible background, leverage it to try to do something and be your own boss. And he said he was thrilled that I even kind of planted the seed in his mind.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And it could have played out so different had he not worked with you. He might
Right.
have been on a year-long job search,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
quite common of what we see right now, which then really takes a toll on your confidence. You don't keep your skills as fresh. It impacts every aspect of who you are.
It does, for sure. I completely agree with
Yes.
that. Hmm.
So even if it's just a few hours a week that you can get a contract for, it keeps you sane, it keeps some money coming in, it expands your network,
Yeah.
and it can grow into more clients or
Mhm.
possible other future opportunities.
Yeah, I mean it's a win-win all around. There's
100%.
absolutely no negative. And I think one thing that's really hard for a lot of job seekers, and I completely understand this because the same thing happened to me, is I think the longer you go through a job search, the more your confidence gets hit, right? And so imposter syndrome seems to kind of seep in. And so many of my clients come to me after they have been in the job search for 4, 5, 6 months, maybe longer, and they're banging their head against the wall saying, why is nobody looking at my resume? Why can I not even get an interview? And I think even the most seasoned professional that has probably the most incredible background it's only human nature to have your confidence take a hit when you're facing rejection after rejection after rejection. And what I always say is, and I posted about this recently on LinkedIn, is never let a recruiter who spends 10 seconds looking at your resume hit your confidence, because they don't know you. They don't know what you're capable of, right? But certainly when you're in a job search and either you're being ghosted or you're applying to 100 jobs a day and you're hearing nothing back, of course, people could start to look at themselves and say, something is really wrong with me. And so one of the biggest challenges I think that job seekers are facing is that confidence and self-esteem really seem to do take a hit. And I think the longer the job search goes on, the more people start feeling those feelings. And it's just, my heart goes out to everyone looking for a new opportunity, but anyone who's been in the job search 6 months or longer, I think that's when it becomes that's not a good situation to be in. I mean, first of all, like perhaps from a financial standpoint, but just from an emotional and mental standpoint, it could really, really affect every area of your life the longer it takes to find that job.
100%. I see this
Mhm.
so often. And it's so important to take care of your mental health as you're
Yep.
going through it, to
Mhm.
carve out time for yourself, as you said, to not let them define your value, and also having a support system around you. You can't go through this on your own. You have to have people around you that lift you up, that when you have those low days and they come in a job search where you get yet another rejection, that there is someone you can lean on and have
Mhm.
their support.
Yeah, you raise a great point. I mean, having a support system of people that you trust and really love you and care about you, I think is imperative when you're going through something like a job search.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when you work with people who have been banging their head against a wall for 6 months, what are the steps they can take to go from being overlooked to actually being in demand? What are some specific things someone can do to show up differently?
Yeah, something that I think a lot of job seekers know, but they don't necessarily do this, is really getting themselves out there and networking. I think a lot of job seekers rely solely on a job board and they don't rely on their network or forming relationships with people. Um, it is incredibly important, and you probably know this, right? But when you are in a job hunt in a market like this, where there are 1,000 other people applying for the same job, you have to stand out from the rest. And one of the things that I do with my clients is I show them how to find decision makers on LinkedIn. So I'll say, okay, give me the name of a company you recently applied to. We'll go to the company page. I'll go into the people tab. I'll go into the search bar and we'll play around a little bit in the tool. Reaching out to decision makers is going to make all the difference. I want to tell you a really quick story of how I found a previous job of mine. So, after my second layoff that I was talking about, there was actually a company I worked at for a couple years before I did branch out on my own. And the way I found this job was I reached out directly to the CEO on LinkedIn. There was no job posting. I had no idea if the company was hiring. As far as I knew, they weren't because there wasn't a job posting. But this was a company that I always had in the back of my mind. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to reach out to the CEO, and one of two things are going to happen. She's either going to get back to me or she's not. And if she doesn't, at least I know I tried. Well, interestingly enough, she wrote me back and she said, I'm so happy you reached out. We are actually looking to build the recruiting function of our team. It was a really small HR consultant firm based out of San Francisco. And she said, we're looking to build out our talent acquisition recruiting function. Why don't you and I have a conversation? Her and I had a call. I had a job offer in my hand 2 weeks later, and I worked there for 3 years.
Wow.
And the reason I'm sharing this story, and I share this story with my clients, is because I know for sure that if I did not contact her, there was no way I would have had that job because there was no job posting for me to even apply to. And I always thought, shoot your shot. The worst that can happen is you don't hear back or they decline you, but then at least you know you tried. And so in this job market, I think being your own best advocate and reaching for the stars, those are the people that are going to get jobs faster because again, if you simply just apply to job boards, that's typically not going to move the needle.
Yes. 100%. I always tell my clients that if you're applying to a role that you really, really want, you have to be determined to find someone at that company to
Mhm.
talk to.
Yes.
Someone.
Yes.
Ideally, the hiring manager or the recruiter. But if they don't get back to you, someone else on the team, another decision maker who can vouch for you.
Hmm.
It's the
Hmm.
only way to stand out in this market.
Yes. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah. Yeah. Applying online, the chances are pretty much non-existent that they
Hmm.
will reach out to you. Even with the perfect resume,
Right.
you're still one of 100 plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is really challenging about this job market is that companies are waiting a lot longer to make a decision. And so I think a lot of companies know that they're in the driver's seat because it's an employer-driven market versus an employee-driven market. So what's happening is that these hiring timelines have become really, really long. A lot of companies are requiring candidates to submit an assignment or take an assessment. I've had clients that have gone through multiple rounds of interviews for one company, and the process takes months and months to complete. And so companies, I think, are dragging themselves a little bit more because they know that if something doesn't work out with a particular candidate, they have thousands of others to choose from. You know, when COVID hit and the world shut down, the landscape was so different. I mean, back then, companies couldn't find people to hire fast enough, and the pendulum has completely changed to the other side, where right now it is absolutely an employer-driven market, and I do believe it's going to be that way for the foreseeable future.
100%.
Mhm.
Another way to stand out that I'd love to talk about to you is personal branding, because you've built a massive presence on LinkedIn with hundreds of millions of impressions, which is so amazing. Um, what recommendations do you have for others, specifically job seekers, or maybe someone who wants to gain their own clients as a consultant or freelancer? What works when it comes to building a brand? Is that something you recommend professionals do? And are there any mistakes or something they might not be doing right?
So I love this question because I think it's an important one. Building my brand was one of the best things I did. And what's so interesting is that when I started on this journey, my goal wasn't to build a brand. Like I wasn't like, oh, I want to build the Melissa Grabiner brand. That never even crossed my mind. But the more active I became on LinkedIn and the more my follower count continued to grow, the more fun I was having with it. And so, people ask me all the time, how did you amass almost 500,000 followers? And what I say is that, this didn't happen overnight. It took a really long time to get to the point where I am now. But I do believe my brand has helped open up so many doors. So, for example, with my coaching business, I have a lot of credibility based on my number of followers, based on a lot of the posts that I put out there. So building this brand has allowed me to, I would think for a lot of job seekers, I've built that trust because I already have that personal brand. I work with companies on brand partnerships. That's because I've built a personal brand. So there are many advantages to building a brand, but I will say that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to be committed to it for it to work.
1000%.
Mhm.
And you have to keep going. It is
You
not
do.
something you post 10 times and that's it. It is
Right.
something you have to be committed over the long haul. But I agree fully with you that it does pay off.
It does. And it's been a lot of fun. When I started on my LinkedIn journey, I'll tell you when it really, I'll tell you when it kind of hit me. So when I have a son who's 23 years old, and when we dropped him off at college freshman year, on the way home, the drive on the way home, I remember saying to my husband, oh my God, I just hit 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And at that time, I wasn't serious about LinkedIn. I was maybe on it once or twice a week. And this was about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. And I remember saying to my husband, oh my God, I have 30,000 followers. And he was like, that's incredible. And it hit me then that maybe I have something here. Maybe if I keep up with this, we can kind of see where it takes me. And in that time frame, between like then and now, I've really grown my following. And because I've grown my following, it was through that I started two small businesses. I started a business helping job seekers, and I started a business working with select companies on brand partnerships. And I also do talent acquisition consulting. And so all of this came about because of LinkedIn. So what I always say to people is, you're not going to wake up one day with 500,000 followers. Okay. It takes time. I probably spend 5 to 7 hours a day on LinkedIn. I enjoy it, so I don't mind doing it, but LinkedIn has helped me kind of become the professional I am today. But it's the long game. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so it takes time to build an audience, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I post on LinkedIn about once a day, maybe 6 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week. And that's all. I mean, I see people that are posting like 5, 6 times a day. I personally think that's overkill and you're going to fatigue your audience. I typically post once a day. I comment on other people's posts. I think a lot of the magic on LinkedIn is not necessarily from posting, it's from commenting.
Yes.
Because when you comment on a post, that is when people really, really see you. And so what's nice about LinkedIn is it shows you the impression. So you can go through your feed and you can look at how many impressions each of your comments get. I mean, there are some comments I do that have over 10,000 impressions. But think of it this way, that's 10,000 eyeballs on my comment, right? And
Exactly.
so what's really interesting is my headline on LinkedIn under my name, it starts with top rated resume writer. Well, every time you comment on LinkedIn, the beginning of your headline follows you. So many people reach out to me and say, "Hey, Melissa, I saw your comment on so and so's post. I noticed that you're a resume writer. I need help with my resume." And people aren't reaching out to me because I posted that I'm a resume writer. People are reaching out to me because they saw a comment. And I didn't comment that I'm a resume writer, but my headline shows it.
Yes.
So that's what when I'm working with my clients, when we talk about like how do we shape your headline, and again, the headline's under your name, how do we shape that? Well, let's think about what makes sense, but let's order it strategically. So if you comment on a post, what are the things you want people to see? You want to put that at the beginning of your headline.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a magical tool. I know that a lot of people poo-poo it, and a lot of people think it's like kind of just cringy and not their thing. And I know there's a lot of people that hate on it, but honestly, I mean, it's changed my life, but you have to put in the work. You're not going to wake up one day with 500,000 followers. It's going to take time and it's going to take effort. But to me,
Yes.
the reward is the end result and the reward is so worth it.
I couldn't agree more. I just had an example with a client I'm working with. She is very interested in specific types of companies. She's very passionate about a cause in a specific area and is following those companies on LinkedIn, engaging with their posts. She commented on one of the company's posts, which had a senior leader in the company reach out to her just because of her comment.
Oh my God, I love that. That is such a good example
It's
of the
magic.
power of putting yourself out there. I mean,
Yes.
that's such a great example. I love it.
Yes. And what always fascinates me is how little people take advantage of
Right.
commenting.
Hmm.
When you look at company posts, yes, they are done by their social media team or by their marketing team. So you might not get directly to the hiring manager. But there are the majority of company posts on LinkedIn, they have about 10K impressions and 2 comments. That is such a missed opportunity. If
Hmm.
you're interested in that company, comment on that post.
A
That
hundred
means
percent.
10K of these people see the post. Let's say a third of them sees your comment. That's about 3K of people see over 3K of people seeing your comment. Chances
Mhm.
are people within that company are following that company and also see your comment.
Yeah.
It's a gold mine.
100%. I mean, the gold, and this is what I tell clients, this is what I tell people who reach out to me. The gold mine on LinkedIn isn't necessarily what you're posting, it's what you're commenting. So if I post something, and my posts typically do pretty well in terms of engagement, but cumulatively, my comments for the day, the number of impressions, tenfold the number of impressions I get from one of my posts.
Yes, yes.
So
It's
the
incredible.
magic is in the commenting. There's
The
no
magic
question
is in the
about it.
commenting. Yes.
Hmm.
And the magic is also in how you approach and use LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I hear from a lot of job seekers that get so frustrated because all you see on your feed are people who just land a job with jobs, which makes you just feel bad because it wasn't you, even though you're happy for them. Or it's people who complain that they send out a million
Yeah.
applications and haven't gotten jobs.
Yeah.
If that is your feed, oh my God, that is so demotivating. I wouldn't want that either. But you
No.
actually have a lot of control about building your feed.
Sure.
If you're interested in a certain topic, let's say you work in HR, follow the thought leaders in HR, engage with their posts, look for value-driven content in the area that you're interested in. Let's say you're really interested in all the latest AI technology and how it's used in HR. They are fantastic thought leaders posting about it every day. Fill your feed with those by engaging with them. That makes your experience on LinkedIn a million times better. And it's the people you actually want to network with.
Yeah, the other underutilized portion of LinkedIn are groups. I will share this. And so I am a member of this one group. It's called the Emotional Intelligence Network. I love this group. And there are about, I want to say about 1 million followers. So I posted on this group 2 days ago. I made a post. And again, this has 1 million followers, this particular group. My post got 9,200 impressions, which is huge. And over 1,000 people shared my post. So think about that. 1,000 people took my post, clicked reshare. So all of a sudden, my name is under 1,000 new eyeballs. And the impression I got from this particular post, again, on this group, the number of impressions I got was 252,000 impressions. So 252,000 people saw my post 3 days ago. So one of those hidden gems of LinkedIn are groups. I'm not saying you have to join a ton of groups. I'm a member of maybe 4 or 5 groups, but the groups that I'm a member of have a lot of members in those groups, right? And I really love the content in these particular groups. So I believe that part of the reason why my followers has grown so quickly is because of the groups that I'm involved in. So what I always suggest to my clients is think about 4 or 5 groups that would interest you, join the groups, post to the groups, and comment on people's posts in the groups.
Yeah.
Because that's how your name is going to get out there.
Yes, that is such a beautiful example. And imagine as a job seeker, that content you put out, your name and your LinkedIn headline is seen by 250,000 people, even if it doesn't do as well and it's seen by 25,000 or just by 2,500 people. It's huge.
Yes.
It's huge. This is how you get your name out. And if you are talking about the things you want to be known for, people are going to start recognizing your name and pay attention.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, there's beauty in groups. There's a little bit of magic behind it, but those groups to me are the hidden gems of LinkedIn. And there's hundreds of thousands of groups you can join. So just like, I'm going to just say this, I'm just going to do this quick search. So if I type in human resources in the search bar and I click on the word groups, there are 10,000 groups on LinkedIn that are in HR. Think about how crazy that is. So there are groups, 10,000 groups that are HR focused. So yeah, join the groups that have a lot of members, but don't just join it, like engage in it, engage in the posts. Post to the groups, maybe once a week. Usually about once a week, I post to the Emotional Intelligence Network, but my posts tend to do really, really well when I actually post in there. So the groups have been a lot of fun.
And this is again where AI is such a fantastic thought partner. If you're someone who's never written a post on LinkedIn, you can talk to it or you can tell HI, I just joined this group. It's a human resource group of, let's say, female professionals in HR. And I see that people post about these topics. Can you give me 10 ideas about what I could make a post about? And then use that prompt. And then you have some ideas. Be like, oh yeah, one of those. I have a story to tell about this. And then tell your story. Don't have AI write your post because that's not going to do as well. You can have it to audit or edit your post, but you tell the story that comes to mind as you're reading those ideas.
Yep.
That is what people resonate with.
Exactly.
Yeah. 100%. I love the idea of these groups. You have to be careful on LinkedIn to find one that is active, though. There are some groups that are not active, but you'll know immediately when you
You
join
will.
of how many posts you see coming through. And if it's something that's interesting to you, it becomes natural to engage.
Exactly.
If you had to give someone who is in their mid or senior career level a 30-day career reset plan, let's say they've been trying to land a new role for a while and nothing has really been working, what would be the plan for them to dramatically improve their chances of landing a better opportunity? And what does that look like step by step?
I would say spend time writing down everybody you know. Because remember, everyone has their own network, right? So you might know 10 people, but those 10 people have networks of their own. And try to build meaningful network connections with people. Reach out to, I would say, 5 to 10 people a day on LinkedIn, asking for 15 minutes of their time. Really, really put yourself out there. So not just connect with them, but have actual conversations. I would say spend a small portion of your time actually applying to jobs, spend more of your time networking. So, in other words, getting visible or that visibility. I would say spend some time on your growth. So, maybe learning a relevant skill to the target roles that you are targeting. Spend a little bit of time doing some mock interviewing. But absolutely, without question, and I know I've said this a lot during our discussion, networking is going to move the needle more than anything else in this job market. This is what I see from my clients. 90% of my clients who have received new jobs since I've started working with them found new jobs through their network. It's how I found my prior job as well. I was telling you the story about reaching out to the CEO, Christine Matthews, on LinkedIn. Take care of your mental and emotional health. So try to take time every day to do something that makes your heart and soul happy. Take breaks as needed. Know that every day is a new day. Just keep at it. Maybe go to networking events. I don't think there's anything wrong with going to networking events, but spend time trying to reach out to decision makers and just always keep in the back of your mind that the job search will not last forever. And something you and I talked about earlier that I think is important to reiterate is think about if there's a way you can monetize your skill set outside of a corporate 9 to 5 job. That doesn't mean you can't still be looking for a job, but are there skills that you have that you can monetize outside of, a full-time job? I have one client who got a part-time job at Trader Joe's because he needed just to get his mind away from the job search, and it was a way to still bring money in, still be out in the public, still kind of interact with people. Searching for a job could be like a full-time job, but take care of yourself. But the number one suggestion I have for anyone, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's putting yourself out there. The worst that can happen is you reach out to people and you don't hear back. But if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to know. And that's the best advice I would give to anyone searching for a new opportunity right now.
I could not agree more. And
Mhm.
in the end, all you're looking for is that one yes.
A hundred
So
percent.
how
Exactly.
you said it was so beautiful. It's not going to last forever.
Right.
Yes, there might be no's, sometimes a lot of no's on the way, but the one thing you're looking for is that one yes. And that's
Exactly.
all it takes to turn everything around.
Mhm.
Someone saying yes to a conversation, someone saying yes to the job offer that they're offering you.
Right.
Oh my God, Melissa, this was such a fantastic conversation.
It was
Where can
fun.
we connect with you and learn more about your work?
So, connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. And if they want to learn about my services, there's a little like a thing they can click where it says book an appointment that will take people directly to my website. But yeah, thank you for asking. And please follow me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. And if you need help with your job search, I'd love to assist.
I love that. And I will make sure that we link to your website as well as to your LinkedIn profile in the description of this episode so that people can find you and follow you and get all your amazing content and connect with you. Thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
I loved this conversation. And I hope that this episode reminded you that even in a tough job market, there is so much more in your control than it might feel on one of those hard days. The way that you position yourself, the way that you tell your story, the way you build relationships, and the way you show up visibly all matter so much more than ever right now. And if there's one big takeaway from today, it's this. Your career is way too important to leave it entirely in someone else's hands. The more you invest in your visibility, your network, your strength, and your own growth, the more opportunities you are creating for yourself. And if this conversation got you thinking about your own career and where you might want to go next, I have a fantastic resource for you. It is called the Career Clarity Quiz, and it will help you find out what's actually keeping you stuck and what to focus on next. The link is in the show notes. And of course, don't forget to join me again next week for another episode full of insights, inspiration, and actionable advice on finding a career you love. Because you shouldn't and you don't have to settle. Keep chasing what makes you come alive, and I'll see you back here next week on Career Clarity Unlocked. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free Career Clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.